So thank you for providing me the opportunity to tell you something on the EU Pearl initiative. And I'm doing this as Rianne Oostenbrink. I'm a pediatrician in ERASMUS Medical Center in Rotterdam and work package leader of work package 7 in this project. And this work package deals with neurofibromatosis. So the EU Pearl initiative is focusing on building platform trials for neurofibromatosis. First, to mention to you, I have nothing to declare of serious influences, although I'm advisory consultant to AstraZeneca, which is unpaid. So let me first introduce to you the Pearl project, and that's short for European Patient-Centric Clinical Trial Platforms, which is a public-private partnership to create a framework for future clinical trial platforms. And EU Pearl aims to offer a framework or an infrastructure to collaborate with pharmaceutical companies and healthcare providers and to integrate the patient opinion in this. Co-designed by patients, as it is mentioned on this slide. And EU Pearl hopes to improve and to accelerate drug development by transform clinical trials into a cross-company collaborative and a multi-compound platform focused on patients. This slide presents the project's concept, which is a basic framework for how it works and includes the legal and ethical issues, also data management and data sharing and networking, which is very much required when you have collaborative trials among different countries. And on top of the basic four conditions, on top of that, there are 4 conditions included, with neurofibromatosis as one of them, and we are happy that the importance to develop trials for a rare condition is acknowledged in this project. Let me first explain a bit on what's a platform trial compared to a regular trial. So this slide is not presenting a platform trial by the regular trial that you may understand, where we usually, when we want to test the effect of drugs in patients, we put a group of patients blinded to a drug and evaluate the effect on it, and to another group we provide the placebo and evaluate them at a similar way. And the effect difference between the 2 arms will inform us whether a drug is beneficial. For a platform trial, this is much more extended. So what we are considering then is that you have again one group of patients that's receiving the placebo, so the non-drug, or otherwise if there is already one accepted treatment present, that you provide those patients with the regular treatment. And then you have several arms that different patient groups may be exposed to different drugs. And if in an interim analysis the drug doesn't seem to reach that level of effect that we anticipate, we can stop that arm, but the trial will go on with the other arms. And that's providing us a little bit faster turnover of introducing new drugs, because you do not have to start a new trial, but you can continue on the trial you have developed, but also you can compare more easily different arms and different effects. So that's a benefit of how much patience you need. So this is the basic concept of how to accelerate the drug development and to evaluate their effect. So let's now go to the main tasks for Work Package 7 in the EU Pearl project. Of course, we need to define the scope of the disease spectrum. Neurofibromatosis encompasses NF1, NF2 and schwannomatosis. But to what manifestations are we focusing? But also, how do we define the patients that should be included in the trials? An important issue is to prioritize the main challenges in the disease. Which manifestations do we want to tackle with treatments and evaluate? We also need to define outcomes and endpoints. How are we going to measure effects? And could we think on markers that predict disease progression? For example, key risk predictors or biomarkers, as we call that. And to go in more detail, for the rest of the talk, I will inform you on the prioritization of the main challenges in diseases, which was the first task we finished in this project. So to identify challenges, we used an adjusted Delphi approach with two parallel arms. So there was one arm included for health experts, as shown here, and there was a second arm for patient representative study. And the Delphi approach is a way of a survey that you ask participants on their opinion, and based on their responses you will have another round with adjusted questions, and you, in that sense, you try to achieve consensus in the end. So in the health professionals we did a first survey on what manifestations should we include anyway, but we also reduced that number of manifestations. In the second round we asked them to score the manifestations for the need for drugs and availability and evidence of those treatments. And in the consensus workshop, in a group discussion, we ranked the manifestations on their need. In the patient group that participated, we did similar, so we provided them a survey and asked to score for each manifestation the need for new drug treatment, but also to classify the severity and the burden of the manifestation. And in a consensus workshop, we ranked again the need to develop trials for those manifestations. This slide shortly overviews the participants. So we had for the health experts 43 participants, but distributed among the first and second round, and a little bit variation on the number of those experienced with NF1, NF2 and schwannomatosis. And the patient representatives responses consisted of 63 participants, and we obtained them from the CTF group, the NFPU and the NF2 patient group in Europe. And there were a mixed combination of patients themselves and parents or caregivers. So let me first inform you on the outcome of neurofibromatosis 1, as many manifestations, but that had a lot of manifestations. And because they had so many different manifestations, we decided to group them, and we identified groups like MPNST sarcoma, high-grade glioma, plexiform neurofibroma, and the others as listed there. We also decided to exclude some manifestations in the consideration because there was already therapy available, or we didn't think that the trial would be feasible because of the difficulty in defining outcomes. And those are listed here, like mental health problems, migraine, puberty, sleep disorders and hypertension, because those conditions often are treated also independent of NF. So I made in purple the manifestations that obtained the highest score for the need for treatment as evaluated by the health professional, and that were the MPNST, the plexiform neurofibroma, cutaneous manifestations and low-grade glioma, and developmental and neuropsychological abnormalities were a fifth group. For NF2, the diversity was a little bit smaller, so the study was a little bit more easy. We grouped tumor manifestations and neuropathy, and we excluded manifestations like cataract, retinal hamartoma, or subcutaneous schwannomas in NF2, as they are treatable or rarely causing symptoms. And what you see is that both groups obtained quite high median scores. but the tumor manifestations a bit higher. For schwannomatosis, in particular the manifestation pain was identified, but we also considered loss of function and numbness and tingling. And pain was assigned the highest score. We excluded meningioma and unilateral vestibular schwannomas because we considered they are rare and have good surgical options. So these were the health professional results. Now let's switch to the results of the patient survey. And as I have told you, we were asking you to judge the manifestation on the need for treatment, the severity, and on the burden, like economic, psychosocial, and physical burden. So this is the spider graph for neurofibromatosis 1 manifestations. And what you see is that the dots within one manifestations along the 5 elements they were scored for are connected by a colored line. And you see that all the lines almost all cover each other. So what you could consider is that all manifestations were ranked quite high, scored quite high, but they also had the same pattern. So also all elements were considered similarly. And the only deviation from this shape was the developmental and neuropsychological manifestations, which were a little bit less valued. And that's the difference compared to the health professionals. For the NF2 manifestations, there was a little bit more variation, but a little also the same shape. So all manifestations were similarly scored, but vestibular schwannomas was the outside boundary, so obtained the highest scores. And for example, the cutaneous or subcutaneous schwannomas obtained the lowest scores. And for schwannomatosis, a similar outcome was observed, with pain having the highest score on all elements and the numbness much less. So in the consensus meeting, we further ranked these manifestations to decide which manifestations should be prioritized. And well, this is the table from the health experts. And in blue, the manifestations are marked that obtained the highest ranking. I put aside the table that was obtained from the ranking in the consensus meeting with the patient representatives. And well, what you see is more or less that sarcoma, well, top 1 in the health experts and second in the patients. Cutaneous 3 in the health experts and also 3 to the patient representatives. So the major change was for high-grade gliomas. And another major change was that neurodevelopmental manifestations was not that much valued by the patient representatives. So based on these 2 consensus outcomes, we concluded that the challenges to develop platform trials for in NF1 manifestations should focus on sarcoma and MPNST, high-grade gliomas, plexiform neurofibromas and cutaneous neurofibromas, although we acknowledge a little bit the difficulties of the high-grade gliomas, given that there is current no drug treatment for, and the low number of patients and the very rapid disease course. For NF2, the tumor manifestation seems mostly to be prioritized, and for schwannomatosis, pain. So this is the basis we will continue in our project to develop platform trials for, and I hope to inform you on that in future meetings. But also we need to define the proper outcome measures for these manifestations, how to define potential effect of drug treatment, and that's also an issue where we probably will approach you to have your input on. And I hope we can have indeed your collaboration for that. So thank you for sharing these current results, and if there comes questions, I'm happy to answer them later at another moment. So these are all the partners in Europol. Thank you for the time and attention.